At Thanksgiving dinner, my father didn't lower his voice or soften the blow. Instead, he looked me straight in the eye, right there in front of every relative at that table, and announced that I was a useless failure. After that, he pointed at the door and told me to go live in the streets. There was no whisper, no shame, just a clean, public cut. My mother didn't blink. Crystal hid a smile in her napkin, and suddenly my chair felt as if it sat a mile away from anyone who had ever claimed to love me. I didn't fight and I didn't cry. I simply stood, smoothed my coat, and walked out quiet and steady, carrying their judgment on my back like a weight I had finally stopped pretending wasn't there. They had no idea I earned 25 million a year, and the moment the cold air hit my face, something shifted. 3 weeks later, everything they thought they controlled collapsed in front of them. Before I tell you the rest, tell me where you're listening from, so I know I'm not the only one who's lived this kind of betrayal. My name is Zoe Hartman, and if you saw my family from the outside, you'd swear we were picture perfect holiday cards with matching sweaters. Smiles rehearsed, a dining room staged like a magazine spread. But perfection can be a disguise, and my parents wore it better than anyone I've ever met. Growing up, I learned early where I belonged, and more importantly, where I didn't. Crystal, my younger sister, was the sun in every room, the golden child, the chosen one. My parents spoke her name like an accomplishment and mine like an inconvenience. She received violin lessons, summer programs, private tutoring. I received chores and reminders to be grateful that Crystal set such a good example. I didn't fit the Hartman mold. While Crystal posed for photos, I stayed up late teaching myself how to build websites, automate systems, and fix things people didn't even know were broken. At 16, while other girls posted prom dresses, I posted my first online project, and my family brushed it off as a quirky phase. When I left college to build something real, they said I embarrassed them. They never asked what I was creating, they only asked what people would think. By the time I turned 32, Crystal had become everything they wanted: polished, charming, loud enough to fill a room. I had become everything they dismissed: quiet, independent, unwilling to shrink myself to fit their expectations. And the quieter I grew, the louder they rewrote my story. According to them, I wasn't building companies. I was messing around online. I wasn't successful. I was struggling. Thanksgiving wasn't new. It was simply the first time they said the quiet part out loud. The humiliation, the whispers, seating me at the end of the table like a distant relative, it had been happening my whole life. But that night, something cracked open inside me. Not because they insulted me, I'd survived worse, but because of how easily they believed their version of me over the truth. Back in Seattle, my penthouse felt like another planet floor to ceiling. Windows, calm lighting, everything I built with my own hands. Yet their voices still echoed, scraping at old wounds I thought I'd sealed. And I kept asking myself the same question: how can people who know so little about your life feel so confident defining it? I didn't know it yet, but their cruelty at that table was only the beginning. The real unraveling began the moment I stopped trying to earn a place in a family that never wanted me whole. The days after Thanksgiving felt strangely hollow, like someone had lowered the world's volume. I went through meetings, strategy calls, product reviews, tasks I usually handled with sharp focus, but my mind drifted back to that table in Portland. I remembered my dad's voice echoing, my mother's unflinching stare, and Crystal watching me like she was witnessing a moment she'd long been waiting for. But humiliation doesn't end where it happens, it lingers. My aftershock arrived 3 days later. I was in my kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil when my phone buzzed with a message from Lily, my cousin, the only person in that family who ever treated me like more than a shadow. "Zoe, I need to tell you something. Your mom's been talking." My stomach tightened. Talking how? A pause. Then she told everyone at church you're basically homeless in Seattle. She said your internet hobbies finally fell apart and you're staying on couches for now. I set the phone down as the room spun. Homeless, couch surfing, failed at life. They hadn't just thrown me out, they rewrote the story with the same confidence they used when calling. Crystal a genius for breathing? I texted, I have a 3-bedroom penthouse. Lily replied, I know. They don't want to know. That line cut deeper than the lie. They didn't want to know. Knowing would force them to face the truth, that everything they mocked, minimized, dismissed had turned into success they couldn't control. 2 days later, that aftershock became a fault line. An email slid into my inbox from a Portland law office. Subject, confirmation required for your guarantor status. Guarantor for what? I opened it and felt my breath stall. The message referenced a renovation loan of around $400,000 taken out too. Years earlier, and according to the attached documents, I was listed as the guarantor. I had never signed anything for them. I never would have. But the file included a scan of my signature. One glance, and every nerve in my body went cold. They had forged my name on a massive loan, a loan partially funneled into Crystal's boutique, the one she bragged about like destiny. Suddenly, Thanksgiving made sense. They needed me small, powerless, easy to use, easy to frame as unstable if the loan collapsed. I stood in my kitchen with city lights reflecting off the glass and let the truth settle cold in my veins. They hadn't just thrown me out, they'd stolen from me. And the worst part was how confidently they believed they had the right. That night, something inside me stopped breaking and began sharpening. The first thing I felt wasn't anger, it was clarity. Cold, steady, frighteningly calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to understand them or excuse them or win them over. I was simply done, but being done didn't mean walking away. It meant drawing a line they would never cross again. The next morning, I combed through every document the law firm referenced payments, bills, records tied to the boutique renovation. Every trail led to the same truth. Huge sums were moved without transparency, and the loan secured with my forged signature was sliding toward default. If it defaulted, the lender could seize assets, order a sell-off, or force recovery, and if my name stayed on the paperwork, I'd be dragged with them. I forwarded everything to my attorney in Seattle. He called within minutes. Zoe, this isn't sloppy. This is deliberate. I know. Are you sure you're ready to pursue this? Once we open the door, it won't close quietly. That's the point. We began immediately verifying handwriting inconsistencies, tracking money flow, documenting every act of financial misrepresentation. And as we dug deeper, one pattern became unmistakable. My family had built their recent life upgrades on borrowed money. Not earned, not saved, borrowed, with my name as their safety net. The realization didn't hurt. What hurt was how naturally they believed I'd never fight back. 3 days into the review, my attorney called again. If the loan keeps sliding, the lender may consider transferring control if a qualified buyer steps in to absorb the debt. I'm qualified, I said. You're more than qualified. If you want to take over, I can initiate it. I looked out at the Seattle skyline, clouds rolling low over the water. Do it. That decision lit a fuse. Over the next 2 weeks, my team and I moved quietly, positioning ourselves to legally acquire the loan if it defaulted, giving me leverage over the property and every financial choice tied to it. And none of it was vindictive. It was protection, my life, my reputation, my work, and if they dragged me into a mess they created, I'd ensure I controlled the way it unraveled. And still, throughout the entire process, not a single person from my family called. Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to lie. It was almost poetic, the way they stayed silent while I built the outcome that would change everything for them. By the time the 3rd week arrived, my attorney confirmed it. The loan is entering default. You're first in line. I shut my laptop slowly, that same cold clarity washing over me just like the night they threw me out. 3 weeks ago, they told me to go live in the streets. Now I was about to own the ground beneath their feet. 3 weeks later, my attorney's number lit up my screen as I stepped out of a late meeting. His voice carried the finality of something long expected. "It's official," he said. "Default triggered. You now control the debt and everything tied to it. Everything, the house in Portland, the boutique Crystal flaunted like a crown, the leverage my family never imagined I'd hold." I felt no triumph, only steadiness, as if I were finally standing on solid ground. "Move forward," I instructed. He didn't ask if I was sure, not anymore. We spent 4 days preparing, drafting notices, outlining repayment terms, structuring the offer that gave my family two choices. 1, sell and walk away clean. 2, remain under a strict rental agreement with me as the owner. No cruelty, no theatrics, just consequences, fair, legal, human. But the call I didn't expect came from Portland, not from my parents, but from Mason. "Zoe," he said, voice low and urgent, "you need to know Crystal's panicking. Your parents think the lender is coming after them? They don't know it's you." A pause. "I don't think they'll handle it well." I almost laughed handle it well after they forged my signature, humiliated me, slandered me, and then expected the universe to shield them from fallout they created. But I didn't want panic. I wanted understanding, not of my success, but of the boundaries they'd shattered. So I told Mason, meet me at Bellevue House, Friday dinner. Bring them. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. They think the lender wants to negotiate? Good, I said. Let them walk in, believing that Dot Friday arrived cold and quiet. Seattle wrapped in mist, clinging to the restaurant's private room windows. I arrived early, my attorney at my side. The table was set with candlelight and understated elegance. Nothing flashy, nothing vengeful, just a stage for truth. When the door opened, the first person I saw was my mother. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, expression tight with the strain of pretending everything was fine. My father followed, jaw clenched. Crystal trailed last, eyes red-rimmed but defiant. They didn't greet me, not that I expected them to dot Zoe. My mother said carefully as she sat, "We appreciate you arranging this meeting with the lender. We're confident this is all a misunderstanding." My attorney glanced at me before speaking. "Mrs. Hartman," he began, placing his documents on the table, "there is no misunderstanding, and I'm not the lender's attorney." My father frowned. "Then why are you here?" "Because," my attorney said, sliding the first folder forward, "Miss Hartman is the acquiring party. She now controls the debt, silence thick and suffocating." Crystal's breath hitched. My mother's hand covered her mouth. My father's face went pale. I didn't savor it. I simply watched the truth land. He recovered enough to jab a finger at the paperwork. You bought our loan." "Why would you do that?" "Because," I replied softly, "you put my name on it." My mother shook her head quickly. "We thought you'd understand. Crystal needed help. Your father meant well. Forging my signature isn't mean well. Calling me a failure at Thanksgiving isn't help. Telling people I'm homeless isn't concern." Crystal snapped. "Why couldn't you just let it go? You have money. You don't need this." I looked at her like she had wandered into the wrong story. "You're right, I don't need this. What I need is my name not tied to a sinking loan you all pretended didn't exist." My attorney slid the next document across the table. "These are the terms. You may sell the property and resolve the debt entirely, or if you choose not to sell, Ms. Hartman will assume ownership, and you may remain as tenants under a structured rental contract. We have to rent our own home." My father whispered. "It isn't your home," I corrected. "Not anymore." Crystal glared. disbelief and fury warring in her eyes. You're ruining everything. No, I said. I'm ending what you started. My mother broke into soft, shaky sobs, not guilt, just fear of losing the life she curated for admiration. We're your family, she cried. How can you do this to us? I leaned forward. You taught me how? The night you threw me out, you told me to live in the streets. You said I was useless. You said I had nothing. But the truth is, you never knew me at all. I let that linger before continuing. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to separate myself from choices that were never mine. My father exhaled, anger dissolving into something raw. What do you want from us? Nothing, I answered. No apology, no confession, just accountability. My attorney added, you have 7 days to decide. The meeting ended with no hugs, no shouting, only stunned silence. They left looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. Crystal paused in the doorway, eyes glossy. You could have helped me, she whispered. I did, I replied. Just not the way you wanted. When the door closed, I released a breath I'd carried for years. Not anger released outside. The mist had turned to gentle rain tapping the pavement. I walked through it slowly, feeling the weight of my family's expectations finally slip from my shoulders. 3 weeks earlier, they told me to live in the streets. Tonight, they walked out of a building they no longer owned. And for the first time in my life, the distance between us felt like freedom. Over the next week, the silence from Portland was louder than any argument. No calls, no explanations, no change of heart. My attorney sent brief clinical updates noting their hesitation, their consultations, their dawning realization that no loophole could save them. On the 7th day, moments before the deadline, the decision came. They chose to sell Dot. It was the smartest and cleanest option. The sale cleared the debt in full, released my name entirely, and left them enough to downsize to a smaller home across town. No one was ruined. No one was left desperate. They simply had to live within the boundaries they'd ignored for years. Crystal's boutique didn't survive. Without borrowed money, it collapsed within a month. She posted a vague update about new beginnings, never mentioning the truth. My parents withdrew from their social circles, their curated image quietly replaced by something humbler, and me, I didn't feel victorious. I felt whole. I returned to my work and my life in Seattle, the one I built without needing their validation. For the first time, my success wasn't something I carried silently. It was simply my reality, untouched by whether they acknowledged it. Sometimes protecting yourself isn't loud. Sometimes it's choosing peace so firmly that chaos can't follow you home again. I haven't spoken to them since that dinner. And maybe that's the clearest sign of healing silence that no longer aches. I built a life not shaped by their expectations, judgments, or rewritten stories. A life where my worth is not up for debate. If anything here felt familiar, you're not alone. And if you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, I hope my story reminds you that it's allowed. Share your thoughts. Subscribe and stay for the next.